In late 1999, writers Jeph Loeb and Joe Kelly took on Superman. Over the next 2 years, they would upgrade his city, test his heart, warp his reality, elect his greatest enemy, and bring intergalactic war to his doorstep. It's the final chapter in the Triangle Era, one of my most cherished runs, and the subject of a 7-part Digging for Kryptonite epic. It's the Loeb-Kelly Era. Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss President Luthor from the Loeb-Kelly comic book era is our pal from Aw Yeah Comics Skokie, returning guest, sweet Bernie Gersmeyer. Welcome back.
What's up, man? It's good to see you.
Likewise. I'm so happy we're covering a topic that does not have any highly divisive real-world parallels. I don't think we'll get any blowback to this episode. It'll be smooth sailing.
No, I think everybody will just feel just dandy about it.
This will be a fun, interesting one, I'm sure. I actually have a fun patron question to kick things off.
Nice.
It's not controversial. This is a fun one.
Okay, good.
I quite appreciated this from our pal Logan Crowley. He says, in honor of President Lex, we know old Sweet is a gentleman without follicle concerns, and Mike San Gregorio also curates an unclad cranium. And at least on occasion, Justin DeVoe has suggested he sports a sunbathing scalp. So, getting to the point, if you could only cast one of your bald-headed regular co-hosts as Lex Luthor, who would it be? I just love all the different euphemisms for being bald.
Yeah. Was it follically challenged? Is that what it was, or what was it?
A gentleman without follicle concerns, that's you.
Oh,
San Gregorio curates an unclad cranium. I mean, that's
a good one.
That's elegant.
Logan is a wordsmith.
Yes. And DeVoe sports a sunbathing scalp. So I learned a lot here.
That's nice.
This is actually a super easy answer for me, but I'm curious if you want to weigh in before I give my answer.
I have had many, sadly, a person tell me that I should cosplay as Lex Luthor because I have been in a tuxedo and many a suit, and they have said that I have a Lex Luthor cranium and scowl at times. So,
Bernie, you're a contender, but for me, like I said, this is easy. It's San Gregorio. It's Mike San Gregorio. I've known forever from my old comic shop, and he's been on the show a bunch of times. Yeah, I know you don't know him personally. It's funny because it's not as if he embodies the spirit of Lex Luthor or that I see us as enemies, but we do differ in opinion from time to time. Sometimes that comes up on the show, not always, but it does. But we've kind of talked about each other in that way as he's the Lex Luthor to Mike Clark Kent and vice versa. So yeah, I would have to go with Mike, but I love that question. I
love that too. That's a good way to start.
Yes. Okay.
I've only shaved my head twice, like fully shaved, like full Lex Luthor shaved. And I believe the first time my wife came home, I did it without asking. And her words were, "What did you do?"
Oh, no.
That was the response.
You never want to hear that.
No. Yeah.
So,
but no, we're gonna have a great conversation, man. I'm really excited about this. I've been really enjoying prepping myself, listening to the previous episodes.
Oh no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and really, like I'm going to say about this, it's been a joy to revisit this. I haven't read this. I really don't think I've read it since it came out, to be perfectly honest.
Oh wow!
So it reminded me how much I love this era, and listening to the podcast. It's just a solid batch of writing and good art and great storytelling, and especially the narration.
Right on. Oh, that's awesome to hear. So this is interesting to me because I feel like it's fair to say to the casual comic book reader, if there's one aspect of the Loeb-Kelly run that they can point to, even if they don't know it comes from this run, it's probably Lex Luthor becoming president. And even for someone like myself who knows this run front to back, if you ask me what stands out from it, yes, I'll talk about B13. I'll talk about Lex banging Parasite, talk about Critical Condition, Our Worlds at War. But Lex being president would probably still be at the top of my list, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really just a thing. It's more of just a benchmark in the character's history. Like, oh yeah, he was president too. And you're like, what? Like the villain became president? And that's, I think, even if you know little about Superman, you know that was a thing. And it was alluded to in Smallville. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there.
And yet, and here's the other side of this that I think is really fascinating. And it really hit me as I was studying for this. And you and I prepared in different ways. You worked off of the I believe it's the 2003 President Lex trade paperback. There's also a more recent President Luthor trade that came out in 2018. I'll talk about some of the differences. So you zeroed in on that. I actually read through the half a year's worth of Triangle era issues. So I approached it from a slightly different perspective, but we still...
You're a maniac.
So we prepared slightly differently. But what's kind of fascinating to me about this is President Luthor is not a quote unquote event in the traditional sense. It's even debatable whether or not you could call it an arc or a storyline, and not to get overly semantic about it, but
correct.
When you look at it, and especially when you look at the way it's collected, it's more of this subplot really, or backdrop, right?
Yeah. It was like, oh, this happened. I mean, I almost, you could really get rid of this trade or about this, and because it's interlaced and it's set up through the previous ones. And I think, like, again, you said the white trade I read, the one of the, like the 5 that they put in these orders, it really just collects not even full issues. So even the President Lex stuff we're going to talk about only happens for maybe 4, 5, 6 pages out of the 20-page issues that happen weekly at that point.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. And I'm sure if they were to tell this story today, first of all, I don't know that they could.
Nope.
But second of all, if they were, I think there would be a lot more meat on the bone, and it would be more of a driving force. Whereas it really was more of this background thing. Now, in terms of how it was collected, that President Lex trade from 2003, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is it does collect a number of full issues. It collects Superman 162 through 165, all written by Loeb, as well as the Lex 2000 one-shot. And
and it has a few Man of Steels fully.
Yeah, it's got 3 issues, I believe, issues 108 through 110 of Man of Steel, that Lex 2000 one-shot that I mentioned, and the President Luthor Secret Files and Origin one-shot. And then
Action 773.
But not the full issue. It just has a couple of pages. It's a couple of pages with Lex and Talia at the end, correct?
Correct. And it's the same. There's a few issues of Adventures of Superman, but that are not also the full issues either. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are a few pages here and there from, like you said, issues of Adventures of Superman. There's one issue of Adventures when Lex announces his candidacy that we actually hit on lightly in one of our previous episodes. There's also another issue of Adventures when Superman begrudgingly congratulates President Lex. So those few pages are included. So it's pretty piecemeal. The 2018 trade, President Luthor, that's the one that uses the unauthorized biography of Lex, that one shot as its cover. And it also includes that one shot in it. But that one's even more piecemeal. There are certain issues that are collected in full in the older trade that they only include a few pages of in the newer one.
I wonder, I haven't seen yet. Is there a City of Tomorrow? I know you mentioned the Omnibus is coming out that has 1 and 2 volumes. Has there been anything about past that coming out?
They very recently announced an Our Worlds at War Volume 1, Prelude to War. But that would cover later material. To be honest, and I was really thinking about this, they really could and should, I would argue, do a President Luthor compendium. They could collect everything after Emperor Joker and before Our Worlds at War. And I think in terms of page count and whatnot, that would be appropriate. So they really could, but that does not exist.
I'm never going to complain. And I know that somebody, I forget which of your guests recently mentioned this, that we have to buy them. I know it seems ridiculous. I already have this trade. We do have to buy them because they'll see the fan base wants stuff like this and they'll continue to do it. I think that's where we got bit in the rear with Kyle Rayner volumes and other things like that, where it's oh, well, not as many people really like Kyle, but I swear to you, every person I talk to says Kyle Rayner's my Green Lantern. And I was oh, well, let's get the rest. Where is it? No, so I think it'd be really cool to see them continue through this trade setup.
And one of the reasons I bring this up, I guess this is mostly addressed to people who have not read these stories that we're going to talk about and might want to check it out. I feel like they're in somewhat of a tough spot because I think if they go on the app and they read all of the issues for these few months, like I did, it's an enjoyable reading experience. But if you're reading it for the President Luthor of it all, you're really going to be searching because it's not this driving through line. Yet, on the other hand, if they grab either of those trades, the original one is long out of print. So let's say they get the 2018 President Luthor trade. I keep coming back to this word piecemeal. I think you really can't go into it expecting a cohesive narrative. I think you really have to look at it more as a collection of vignettes or short stories, right? Even the trade that you worked off of. This was a big thing I wanted to ask you. How cohesive a reading experience did it feel to you?
Well, cohesive, maybe not, but enjoyable, yes. I feel like they actually did do a good job encapsulating, like, what would you need to know about not only what happened, what then becomes a fact, but really, I guess I would say it was a good way to present the tone of the time. Like, the tone of how Superman was dealing with this, the supporting characters, Lex himself, Batman, like all of this kind of stuff. And I think it really, in my opinion, is a good one-stop shop if you want to just know what the gist of President Lex's era was.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I would say if you're looking for a good story with him as President Lex, I'd probably point people towards Our Worlds at War or Superman,
Agreed.
Batman, Public Enemies.
Exactly right.
But yeah, if you're looking for how he becomes president, I mean, these are the stories that we're talking about. And I think you do have to approach it more from that mindset of short stories, vignettes, moments.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes that's, I mean, again, I just think that is enjoyable as well, even when you're doing research. It's like, you know what, that's all I need to know. It's more footnote approach versus just comprehensive. So,
yeah.
But no offense to those that love to read, 75 issues or whatever you did.
Yeah, I didn't tally it up, but it was a good few months worth. But I wanted to hit it because there are a few things that are not collected in that trade that you read that I do want to mention and sprinkle in, just to be as comprehensive as we can.
Yeah.
Some that tie in directly to Lex becoming president, and other things that are just sort of notable events in the other books that I don't want to kind of get lost in the shuffle here. But
well, and two things in this trade too that I noticed, and I kind of like these old trades too. Not all trades do this, but they put the covers in the back of these trades, and they don't always do that anymore. But actually, two of the excerpts from this were from the Christmas issues. That was kind of enjoyable. I was like, oh, because you don't really see those collected usually in anything. But it was just kind of fun to see that tone in there too. Because again, it's after election day and it's getting ready for the inauguration.
Yeah, these books, I love that those issues are collected. They're, I think, two of the stronger ones. And one of the things in going through the Loeb Kelly era, again, that really does stand out, they really tracked to the calendar year.
Yeah.
And certainly in an instance like this, it's particularly relevant because we're dealing with the election cycle and whatnot. But they really do stay in that mode, which
was cool.
I like. Yeah, it kind of has that more real world feel to it. So let me ask you, I guess, the big picture question. As these were first coming out and or now upon reread, I mean, just this notion of Lex becoming president, this development, how does this work for you?
Oh, I thought it was cool. Like when it was first coming out, I thought it was a great device. Like I don't think we've never seen that in a book. I don't think we've ever had a major character like that run for office thinking, you know what? Yeah. How can I get these heroes to really fall into line? Well, be president. And that's one of the first things that happens in the trade I read. Like everywhere Lex goes, Superman is there and it drives him nuts. So how can I control him? Become president. He has to theoretically bend to my will if he's going to say he's truth, justice, in the American way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so that trade, I think both versions of the trade kick off with a short story called The Why, written by Greg Rucka. And that came out. It's interesting, the timing of this. I mean, I know we're looking at it all in retrospect, and if you read the collected edition, it's the first thing you read. But that Secret Files and Origins issue, which is where that story appears, came out in the January after Lex was elected. So this was one of the last things in this quote unquote storyline that came out, where you find out why he ran in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I think it was a great creative device to do at the time, which I think they were looking for. And this is now, remind me, this is post Y2K. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was a great next step. I think again, no one had done it before. And I was truthfully excited. I think it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I remember being intrigued by the idea. I was a little kid at the time. I was not nearly as politically aware or plugged in as I would become, as we would all become in recent years. So I had a completely different frame of reference. But I do remember thinking it was a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
I do think it lent itself well to these books and the wider DC universe for a good few years. It was a new way to position Lex and to challenge Superman. And we'll talk all about that. Superman makes a very specific choice to not insert himself in the election and exert any influence over the American voters, because he can't fathom a scenario where the American people would elect someone like Lex Luthor. And he is proven wrong and goes out and punches asteroids.
This sounds so familiar. What would possibly parallel that feeling in our current society, Anthony?
It's funny. So this is not a political podcast, right?
No, it's not.
Very rarely do we even wade into those waters. And the main reason is it's not the purview of the show. And we're here to have fun, to celebrate our favorite character, to have a break from all of that.
However.
Well, yeah, that being said, it is sort of the elephant in the room, or the white elephant, to go back to our last episode on Emperor Joker and all that business about you can't get Batman out of your head. But no, generally, right, that's not the purview of the show. And also, I'll be perfectly honest, and I'm not proud of this, but I think people understand, and I would imagine other podcast hosts and content creators understand. It's like, I don't want to alienate people, right? And that's not an instinct that I'm proud of, because I do want to be truthful about how I feel. But at the same time, you don't want to turn people off. You don't want to alienate people. You don't want your numbers to drop. Like, it's a reality of it. So we like I said, we typically are not heading into that territory.
And nor will we tonight. I mean, I think whether it's not so much what we and you agree with or believe, but it's something that we've seen play out even in newsreels, talking about, how people couldn't possibly think that somebody of this way they speak or what they do would become somebody in power. But we've seen it time and time again in the past, and as recent as our current one too.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, if nothing else, it's kind of impossible as we're rereading it and as we're talking about it to ignore some of these parallels. I mean, my God, in the Lex 2001 shot on election night when he's actually elected, there's a GBS biography that he's watching. And there's a bit about changing Mount Rushmore to add him. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
So stuff like that, obviously.
It's the Gulf of Luthor, isn't it?
Yeah. So stuff like that obviously jumps out. I mean, look, to say that there are parallels generally between Lex and Trump, that's not breaking any new ground. And we know that in the post-crisis comic book landscape, we had this reinvention of Lex Luthor. No longer was he the mad scientist, but rather the evil businessman. And so to have this real estate developer turn to politics, like I said, we're not breaking any new ground to kind of point that out. But I was thinking, like, okay, how can we approach this? And this is ultimately what I landed on, which is, I think that the comparisons between Trump and Lex, while they are apparent and do track to a large extent, I do think that the comparisons ultimately do a very unfavorable disservice to Lex.
Yes.
Like, by a lot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was like, how am I going to talk about this? And then it hit me. I'm like, this is a defense of Lex Luthor. I mean, I feel like this is a very unfair comparison.
You know what's interesting? I think the difference between either past presidents or a current president, and then what we're looking at in the comics, in DC Comics world, and in the world of Superman and Lex Luthor, the masses, the majority, the public, don't know really what Lex Luthor's capable of. So Superman knows, and we, the reader, know, and Lois Lane and some of the Daily Planet folks know that this is this is not going to go well. But we live in a day and age where the masses have heard things said by people and how they feel and what they do and the actions in which they do. So when things happen, it's not a surprise to us. We're like, well, yeah, we saw it. He said he was going to do that, and he did that. So I think that's, while it's a parallel where some people would say the villain has become president, I think the parallel is like Lex Luthor hides it a whole lot better than other presidents we know.
1,000%. And that's, as I was reading this, it's like, yeah, of course we see these parallels, but there were a number of key distinctions. I mean, if we're looking just at the man himself, I mean, Lex actually built himself up out of nothing. Yeah, he killed his parents and used the insurance money along the way, but still, he's a self-made man.
That's close.
He is actually smart and articulate and a prime physical specimen. Yes, that's a result of a deal with Neron, but still.
No,
but still.
That is not a parallel.
But then, yeah, when you get into really more of the specifics of the campaign, what you hit on, honestly, is the main gripe I have had with this storyline then and now. Yeah. And there's a moment, I'm jumping way ahead, years later to Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. There's a moment in that does kind of smooth over a little bit of this in terms of Superman's narration and thought process. There's a little bit of insight I think we glean that helps a little bit. But in terms of what we see here, this is the problem I've always had. To the public in the DC universe, he is this benevolent industrialist. I mean, that GBS biography does actually lay this out, and then Lex wants that part cut. But, you know, what they lay out in that biography matches what we have read as readers of the Triangle Era comics, where Lex was exposed during the Fall of Metropolis storyline, and everything fell apart for him. But then, during his trial, they pinned everything on a clone. So as far as the public of the DC universe knows, now look, it's debatable whether everyone bought it or should have bought it or whatnot, but still, he was cleared in a court of law, and there was at least a seemingly viable explanation for all of it. So to the average person in the DC universe, they don't know what Superman and Batman and Lois know. And so I really feel like this whole notion,
Public Enemies. Right.
Until
way into Public Enemies. Yeah,
exactly. So that's the frustration that I had with the story generally, but with the characters in the story of like, why are you assuming that the people have the knowledge or feelings that you have when there really is this disconnect? Now, in fairness, there is an issue of the Loeb Superman title. I think it's the second part of that Aquaman 2-parter where Lois's narration is all about the truth and when to hold back the truth. It's very interesting. And she does talk about how sometimes there are two truths, and she uses Lex as the example that she and Clark know what he's really like. But then there's also this truth about who he is and what he's about in the eyes of the people. So the story does acknowledge it, at least to some degree. But that's the hurdle I've never totally been able to get over with this.
Well, and like Lois says, the truth is a matter of perspective. And we can say that about many things. Like, there's the old adage too of there's this side of the truth, there's this side of the truth, and then there's the actual truth. There's always three sides to every story. I don't have as much of a gripe simply because I think it's a clever way that the writers allow Lex to wink at us and go, yeah, guess what? No one knows but you. He goes, they all think I'm great. Look what I did for Metropolis. Look what I did for Gotham. I want to share that with the country. That's the person I am. Wink, wink. Like I think it's clever. I think it's frustrating, but I think it's just annoying to us because we're like, we know this is going to end badly, and it does. So, but I guess it doesn't bother me as much as far as what you're saying.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, on the flip side, one thing that I think the story was so clever in doing, and this is something that I don't think I really totally appreciated until this time around, and this is another major distinction between the real life figure and Lex, which is
I know what you're
the messaging. Mm-hmm. Lex runs as an independent. He forms the Tomorrow Party. Yes. It's not about returning to any mythical golden age.
Right.
It's about moving forward. It's about, more practically speaking, sharing the B-13 technology with the rest of the country and the world.
Yeah.
It's about bringing people in. And the thing about it, why I think it's so clever, is that if his platform had been one of anti-Superman, anti-alien, anti-metahuman, it would have tracked and you would have bought it. But that's not the direction he went. In fact, Yeah, no, go
No,
ahead.
he went benefactor. He went philanthropy. He went technology. He went like make America brainiac again. He went that route. And of course, like you would buy that. Like yeah, look what he did. Look what he did with these two things. I want that. I want that for my household. I want that for my city. What might he do for Smallville? Like, of course you're gonna vote for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really looking at it from the perspective of the average voter in the DC universe who doesn't know about all of the evil he's been up to all these years, the way the characters do and the way the readers do. They don't know that. And he is putting forth this notion of unity and progress, and he's bringing in the superhero community into the fold. Yeah. This is minor, but this stood out to me, man. This was so huge. There's an issue of Man of Steel. It's one that's not collected. It's Man of Steel 106. And there's this Atlantean character who attacks Metropolis, destroys the dam and whatnot. That's the main plot of it. But at the end of the issue, there's a news report. And the reporter's talking about how Superman was involved, but it's unclear the nature and extent of his involvement. And then they cut to Lex. Now, you might expect Lex to spout off something like, well, we don't know what Superman was up to. We can't trust him. We got to get to the... He doesn't say that. Instead, he says something to the effect of, I'm sure Superman had our best interests at heart, whatever the situation was, and I look forward to working with him.
Yeah.
So I just love the tactics here.
Yeah.
Because it is, I think, a clever flip on what you would expect from Lex. And the funny thing is, one of the questions that I had for you here, and this goes a bit beyond the scope of what we read specifically for this, but like, until we get to Public Enemies, where he's shooting himself up with a blend of Bane venom and Kryptonite.
He looks bananas by the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he puts a bounty out on Superman and Batman and all of that. And then dons a war suit and fights Superman in the streets of Metropolis. But before that, right, is Lex a good president?
I want to say yeah.
Because I
think he is.
He kind of is.
I don't love it. Like, because there's really no reason. Well, okay, hold on. Let me look at my notes. There was the whole thing towards the end. Hold on, where is it? Oh, well, it's how Finch, the reporter from Adventures 590. So there are still kind of behind the scenes, closed door shenanigans, where, yeah, we got to save this reporter, but he's not really a reporter. He's a Black Ops guy, and he's there to kill people. So I think any president, I think any leadership has done stuff like that too. It's just not again, Superman knows about it. The public doesn't know about it. I mean, as far as what we've read, I don't see him making any bad decisions that is in the worst interest of the people.
Right. And the notion that you brought up about, every president or politician to some degree or another, that's essentially what Kyle voices in that Holiday issue. He's like, yeah, he's a criminal, but the last guy might have been, and the next guy might be.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of outright villainy, now in a few episodes, we're going to get to Our Worlds at War. And there's a lot of business there about how he enters into a pretty dubious alliance with Darkseid, and he has foreknowledge of the destruction of Topeka, Kansas, and he allows that to happen, and millions die. So I'm not saying he's an angel, but certainly at least in this stretch, and looking at it generally, before we get to it really going off the rails and Superman, Batman, he doesn't play it the way you would expect him to play it, is my point, I suppose. And I like that. I feel like that was such a neat twist on what could have been a pretty predictable storyline.
Yes. Like even Inauguration Day, when all that stuff was going down with like the threat against Lex and threat against LexCorp, and Hope and Mercy are doing this, and that Earthquake villain, Lex still kind of keeps his stuff together, and then he wants to do a photo op with Superman and thank him, and you just see Superman again, like so upset. He's like, man, I thought if anything this might break him, but nope, not in front of the cameras, not on the microphones. Let's do a photo op, Superman. Even though he knows every time Lex asks Superman, like, he's thinking, like it's burning Superman up inside to do this kind of stuff.
And in that Secret Files issue, there's a short little 2-pager that introduces Nathaniel McIlvaney, Lex's personal assistant, who calls him Mr. Luthor, just like Otis. It looks just like Otis. Do you remember the payoff to that? It's not in what we read.
No, I don't.
So he's Martian Manhunter in disguise.
Oh, for real?
And this is jumping way ahead, but after Our World's at War, there's Superman 175. It's a Joker's Last Laugh tie-in where Superman fights Doomsday. And Doomsday's attacking, and Nathaniel is there, and Lex says that he's like yelling at Nathaniel. He's like, hey, like, we need help. Lex knows, and he knows that it's been Jean this whole time. He's like, you have the worst attendance record of everyone. Why do you think I let you stay here? So he's like, what? He's like one step ahead of that. It's just interesting to me across the board with how this plays out. And it, like I said, I think it doesn't fall into those stereotypes. So
yeah,
fascinating stuff. Oh, and then this is minor, but just circling back to kind of the publishing angle of all of this. Like we said, not an event or a numbered storyline or anything like that, but for a couple of months, the books do have those not blue, but those Vote Lex 2000 buttons on them.
Yes. I have a Vote Lex.
Oh, really?
Button. Yeah. It's on what I say. I wonder if I have an extra one. I'll have to find if I have two. I would send you one.
Because that was shortly before I started working at my local comic shop. Now, once I started working there, you should see my collection of Green Lantern rings and stuff. Any of the promo stuff. Yeah, I believe me, I grabbed it.
Well, and they don't do this anymore because DC and Marvel don't go to the shows. But, excuse me, back in Fan Expos, Wizard Worlds, all these shows, DC would have bowls of pins and all these things. And the Lex Vote for Lex for 2000. I mean, it was amazing, all that stuff, all that merch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a couple more big picture things, then we can talk about some more of the specific beats and whatnot. But overall, I wanted more from these stories. Yeah. I get why that wasn't the case. I mean, I've been using this example for months now, but in the recent books, Perry was elected mayor of Metropolis. Right. And I keep saying I would have read a whole mini series about him running for mayor. And I would. Yeah. I don't know how much that would appeal to the general audience.
That's what it say. And I think we love the supporting characters. And I think our percentage is much smaller than the masses.
Yeah. So it's the sort of thing I would have eaten this up if we had been able to spend time on the campaign trail or really dig into this more. I get that the books weren't built for it and we got as much as we were going to, especially at that point in time. I mean, the story was ahead of its time and I'm glad we got as much as we did. It breaks my heart that we didn't get more because I feel like it was such a great vehicle for incorporating the supporting cast. I mean, we'll talk more about it, but Pete Ross, Justice for Pete. Pete Ross is his running mate, which of course brings Lana into the fold. And then when we get to him naming his cabinet, Cat Grant, press secretary, Sam Lane, secretary of Defense.
Sam Lane, yep.
You know, so it creates
Jefferson Pierce,
Yeah, so it creates this organic way to utilize these supporting cast members. So that's why I just wanted more, but it's a wonderful vehicle. And then the last thing, you were hitting on this before, but rather than throwing this in at the end, I'll bring it up now. Yeah, this is not the only form of media where you see Lex as president. I could probably guess the answer, but what's the other incarnation of this that stands out to you the most?
Oh, well, I mean, as far as the premonition of Lex being president in Smallville, wearing the white suit, and then I believe standing on top of a bunch of skulls. Isn't that how? What was her name? Was it Cassandra?
Yeah. From season 1. Like that's the funny thing here. I mean, so Lex is elected in 2001 here. And then Smallville starts. Smallville's first season is the 2001-2002 television season. And in that first batch of episodes, the Hourglass episode is the one where this woman touches Lex and sees this vision of the future where he's in the Oval Office in his white suit and black glove and he brings about death and destruction. And then
I'm pretty sure. Isn't Jeph Loeb a consultant on season 1 by that point already?
He came on board season 2.
Oh, so
but and it's so close in time. So they clearly, as much as Smallville was doing its own thing and pulling from a variety of influences, that was a pretty direct, reference to what was going on in the books. And that imagery of him in the white suit, enacting nuclear Armageddon, we would see that play out. There's a season 4 episode Scare where he injects himself with like the fear serum or whatever, and he sees it. And then season 7, the Apocalypse episode where Clark enters a world where he never arrived on Earth. Lex is president.
Right.
hitting launch on the nuclear weapons. And then in the series finale, we get that flash forward. It's not an election year, as our pal Zach always likes to point out. He's not wrong, but Lex is president in the Smallville universe in that flash forward.
I can't think of any other time that we've seen Lex as president.
DCAU. So,
what is in what?
So, well, in Justice League Unlimited, he's running for president, but then he's, it doesn't move forward. But there's in Justice League, I guess before Unlimited, there's that two-parter, A Better World, where we start on the world of the Justice Lords. And Lex is president, and then they kill him.
Now, wasn't that made prior to this?
No.
When was Justice League Unlimited?
I think they're though, not that far apart in time.
Oh, so maybe it was just they were using material like, hey, let's use this in this. I mean, of course, they're all talking to each other. I mean, it's all under the same umbrella. But, that's cool. I didn't remember that. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I've said this before, but I mean, whether it could have been Superman and Lois or it could have been something else, but I feel like it's this storyline is well suited for television, for an episodic
agreed
kind of storyline. Like I would love to see it play out like that.
It's very soap opera-y too. Like, again, it's like moving from different characters to the other. And really, ultimately, what we're reading in this trade and like the ones you read, it's all leading up to Public Enemies. It's all leading up to Our Worlds at War. Like it's just planting seed after seed going like, how is he going to be a leader and why? And then he like loses his crap and we know there's the payoff there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one Smallville podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring great insight, passion, and humor to each and every episode. And the podcast will continue with more great Smallville and Superman talk even after their series coverage concludes. Listen wherever you get podcasts, and keep an eye out for the other shows under the Always Hold On To banner, including Arrow, Star Wars, and more. Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Led by current owner Sean Hendricks, Moose has that rare, old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany the next time you are in the Garden State, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. So, getting a little bit more specific with all of this, I was going to say the earliest notion of this is Adventures of Superman 581 from June 2000. That's when Lex announces his candidacy and that he's going to run as part of the Tomorrow Party. But I would say, and we hit on this in another episode, they plant the seeds as early as the end of Y2K. I think it's in the climax of Y2K that we hear all these news blurbs, and one of them mentions politics. It's very fleeting, but I think as early as that, there's kind of this notion. And then we talked about an issue of Loeb's Superman where Lex is talking to Mercy, and he's talking about how now he's this leader of both Gotham and Metropolis,
right,
and the country could be next. So they were planting some seeds, and I'm glad for that, because that short story from Secret Files that you mentioned, The Why, which I know you like, I don't dislike it. It's a cool story. It's totally silent. You watch Lex as he's going about his day, and essentially everywhere he goes, he's reminded of Superman. Right. So he's training with Mercy, and Superman's on the TV. And then he's walking through the office, and one of his workers has a Superman figure. He goes to eat lunch. There's this beautiful woman, and she's got a Superman tattoo. Yep. He goes to a deli or something like that, and the menu is named after Superman. He can't escape it. And then he sees the newspaper, and it mentions the presidential race. And like you said, it like clearly something clicks of, I'll be in this position of power, of authority over him, right? And this will change our dynamic. But I'm glad it wasn't just that, because I do feel like those other instances we mentioned, and in those stories, seeing how he leverages the B-13 technology to really assert his position in Metropolis, and then to kind of look beyond that. And I love that Gotham keeps getting referenced, because him showing up at the end of No Man's Land is still one of my favorite. I love that so much. And that was, I think, a pivotal kind of domino in all of this. So I'm glad that they didn't forget that.
Yeah. I love having the ability in comics to see and not be told. like those things, like that why short story. I love things like that because it gives you the opportunity to translate the art and not have them like tell you, here's what you're reading and here's how the story moves. That's to me good storytelling, when you use different mediums inside the medium.
Yeah, agreed. So what's funny though is he announces his candidacy in that Adventures issue in June 2000, and then for the entire summer we're off in Emperor Joker land.
Yeah, I know.
And then
I have to reread Emperor Joker. That's on my list to reread.
DeVoe and I had such a fun talk about it. It'll be out by the time people are hearing this.
I can't
obviously.
wait. Good, because I have to reread it because I really didn't love it when I first read it for the first time. So I think I need to reread it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth a reread. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But so then September 2000, we get Superman number 162. It's the first part of a 2-part story featuring Aquaman. At the beginning of this issue, I'm not going to go through the beat by beat, but just to kind of set us up here, where Lois is waking up and there's discussion between her and Clark about how she's been covering the campaign all summer. So like we didn't see any of this, but she was covering the campaign. But what they see on TV is Lex at the soda shop back in Smallville, the one that we spent a lot of time in For All Seasons, and he's announcing his running mate, none other than former Senator Pete Ross.
Yep.
I love how Lois is like, couldn't you be visiting your parents? And Clark's like, on it. And he shows up there in the middle of this.
Yep. I love, don't you have somewhere to be? Good old Pete Ross. Pete Ross is, and he's so down to earth. Like they write him so well. He's such a good, it's such a smart choice, not just from a writer standpoint, but from a Lex Luthor character standpoint. Like, yep, I'm going to pick the person that is the most American. And again, the parallels too, that we can get into a little bit of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I always talk about wanting a role for Pete. I'm glad that there was this. And what I really do love here, you know how much I love Superman For All Seasons. Mm-hmm. And there's a great reference to that because Clark pulls Pete aside and he's like, and I think Pete says, I bet you want to know why I'm doing this. And Clark says, yeah, I want to know as a reporter, but I also want to know as your friend.
Yeah.
And we get a close-up of Pete putting his hand on the elephant head. And he talks about how I always used to wish on this for $1 million. And that's right out of For All Seasons. Every time throughout the seasons, throughout the years as he would go in, I wish I had $1 million. And I will continue to cite Tyler from Krypton Report with this because he unlocked something for me when he's like, Pete is like the George Bailey of Smallville, always kind of stuck there. And that always resonated with me. And so I love that we had a callback to that here. And he says to Clark, he's like, over time, I stopped wishing on this. He goes, I didn't give up on the $1 million. I gave up on the wishing. He's like, I think Lex can win and I'm going to win too. And I'm going to be a winner.
Oh, and
we hear next to nothing from Pete for the whole rest of these stories.
I know, which made me so sad.
It was great while it lasted. That's what I'm saying. This was a great vehicle to actually do something with Pete. But and then he's just like there.
They just screw him. I don't know what the deal is. Why bring him back in general? They talked about Jenny Hubbard more than they talked about Pete Ross.
Oh, we'll get to Jenny Hubbard. Yeah, there's some really good deep cuts in here. Now,
great. When they brought her back, I forgot about that, Anthony. Like when she comes back, I lost it.
Like I said, there are a few things I want to sprinkle in from other issues. On the note of Pete, I want to stick with this for just a second here.
Okay.
Next month, the issue of Adventures of Superman 585. It's just a couple of pages, but we visit Pete and Lex. They're doing their final rally in Smallville before the election. And so it's them in front of the crowd. It's not particularly substantial. I think it's more interesting because you see Jonathan and Martha there and they're not happy about it, but you get another glimpse. Like, again, those are a couple of pages that probably could have been pulled into the trade paperback, but I wanted to mention that. But so, I'm glad that Pete is there, but I wish we got some more.
Did you catch too, Ma Kent throwing shade at Pete?
Ma or Pa?
No, it was Ma.
Go for it.
I was specific, like, what? Because she's usually so sweet. Like, Pa's usually the one that's like, no, like he says it like the way it is. But Ma basically, she's like, I've never been a fan of Pete. Lana deserves better. And I was like, what? Like, where did this come from? That threw me off reading that.
Because are you talking about when they're having pancakes at the?
Yeah.
Because isn't that where Pa's like, I have animals in the barn with more sense than Pete?
Yeah, but Ma says something too.
And
I agree. Yes, and
gotcha. Because I remember from that, I guess what stood out to me about that scene was Pa's remark, which was very funny to me. And then Martha saying essentially to Clark, like, before you go shoot off some article about what an idiot her husband is, keep in mind this is the woman who's carried a torch for you all these years. I'm like, oh, okay. But
then there's a line like you don't bring up religion, politics, and old girlfriends.
Oh, I love that moment between Clark and Pa, because Ma's gone into the other room, and Pa has that line, and she's like, I heard that. I have to say, on a personal note, I haven't talked about this on the show, but my grandfather, he passed away a couple of months ago, and he was 97, in a long life. My grandmother had passed away a few years prior, but one of my most cherished memories, because I spent a lot of time with them as a kid, and as I get older, but especially as a kid, and I would, stay over there for sleepovers occasionally and whatnot. And it was really both of them, but primarily my grandmother, but they would make silver dollar pancakes in the morning when I stayed over. And she would continue making batches as I'm eating the ones that are already there, and my big glass of milk. And it was great. It's just one of my most favorite memories of them. And watching that scene of them having pancakes and that little banter, it took me right back to that. So I'm very grateful for that. It was a nice moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the Pa says that. And then I'm pretty sure like right after that, we find out Laura Lemaris is in town.
Yeah. Looking great, by the way.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the art in this. Even I'm going like, okay, they're definitely drawing ladies a little bit too like womp womp. It was getting a little bit too much. But
by the way,
we can address that a little bit.
She's only there for like a page.
Yeah, barely.
And that follows up in that issue of Man of Steel that I talked about. She wanted Clark's help with that Atlantean who was wreaking havoc. So that's where that continues. Yeah. But yeah, it's really just a brief appearance here. Oh, and also, as we've been talking about the narration in all of these issues, we're back to Lois narrating now that she's out of the woods after that whole business with Parasite and being lost and all that. Right. But this one is all about stories being quote unquote justified, which I really liked because she recounts being told this when she first started. The story has to be justified. Perry needed a very specific number of words. And her first thought back in the day was, well, of course, every story has to be justified. And Perry explains this notion of it literally fitting in each column, and how sometimes as a result of that, there's these giant spaces. Like a line might only have 2 or 3 words, and you have these giant spaces, and it's sort of that unspoken or untold truth in between the words. I like that whole idea.
That's cool. Yeah.
But I guess the main thrust plot-wise of this Superman 2-parter pertains to Aquaman.
Yeah.
Right? There are these LexCorp rigs and ships that have been attacked, and Superman investigates and finds this giant sea creature and flings it away, and then that brings Aquaman into the picture. And essentially, the LexCorp equipment has been emanating this signal that is interfering with the sea life, and Aquaman claims he's not responsible for the attacks directly, but clearly he feels they're quote unquote justified, right?
Right. Yeah. And
the two of them part, and then at the climax of that first issue, Aquaman shows up and abducts Lex to bring him to Atlantis for trial. Yo, did Aquaman grind my gears during these stories? That guy was cruising for a bruising, is my feeling. I don't know how you felt.
Why? Tell me more about that. Was he looking to get his ass kicked by Superman? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like
no, he was telling Superman learn your place, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this first issue, he says to Superman, because Superman might have some remark about that sea creature, like something like, "Whoa, what was that?" And Arthur's like, you spend all this time on other worlds and outer space and whatnot, but you don't even know what's underneath your own ocean.
Yes,
and then.
Jumping it was pretty condescending. All of it was condescending.
Well, and then jumping ahead to that holiday issue, which we'll talk more about, but Superman shows up and gives Aquaman a present, and he says, I don't know if they exchange gifts in Atlantis at this time of year. And Arthur's like, well, why don't you come here and find out? I mean, he says it a little bit more diplomatically than that. I think he says our doors are always open. You can come and spend time here. But it's just, here's the thing, and this is not a critique of the story. I think this is a testament to the story that I had this strong reaction to the character, but I just felt like, yes, I get where Aquaman is coming from, and I'm not saying there's no validity to his point, but it's like, I feel like he's taking advantage of how gracious Superman is, because were Superman to light up those red eyes, I feel he would be, once again, justified. So he just really pissed me off.
Yeah, be like Filet-O-Fish. Like, like, watch who you're talking to.
It's like, who do you think you are? What?
I love how it's like 25 years later and you're still pissed about how Aquaman talks to Superman.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, it made for good conflict, but I mean, and this thing, going from part 1 to part 2, I mean, Tempest shows up with an effing tidal wave and says, "Let Arthur go, or I'm going to flood Metropolis." Yeah. And he does.
he does. And then, actually, I really dug it. Didn't Young Justice show up too?
Yeah.
I love little things like that. And they used to always do that in books. Okay, before we leave this two-parter, I have to ask you something. And maybe because it wasn't in this trade, but you read more of the stuff. Who is the shadow that Perry White is talking to?
Oh, Bruce Wayne, baby.
Because they never in the trade, they never clarify that, and they never come back to it.
In the trade, so I guess maybe you didn't have a chance to read those couple of other issues. Where Batman and Superman get the ring back from Lex?
Yeah.
Oh, because that's where I guess maybe it's not crystal clear that Bruce was the shadowy figure. But yes, that's the payoff to that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I did my homework, baby. No,
I figured you did, but if you hadn't, it would have been all right.
Detective The Ring, Part 2. No, I got it.
But yeah, from as early as the beginning of Loeb's run with the return of the Daily Planet, there's been this notion that Perry brought in this unseen figure to help with the business financial end of things.
Oh, okay.
And there have been at least one, maybe 2 issues previously where Perry's had a conversation with someone in the office and you don't see who it is. So a little ways down the road, we're going to find out that's Bruce Wayne. He's the one he brought in.
Okay, nice.
So we do get a payoff to that.
It never cleared it up. Thank you.
And it might be in this two-parter. One of the issues, and this made me so happy because it's never said, but it's just there in the art that Perry's got this fancy upgraded B13 computer on the floor and he's on his typewriter. And it's like,
and he still won't use it.
That's Perry White. That's Perry White.
Old school.
The last couple of things, I guess, with this two-parter. So in part 2, we got this big flood and Young Justice helps with the rescue efforts and whatnot. And Superman makes it to Atlantis. And I thought this was an interesting twist where Lex has kind of worked it out.
Yes.
Right. And has essentially said that the signal that was going out and harming the fish, he knew nothing about it. He'll rectify the situation.
Yep. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I mean, he literally apologizes.
And he forges this alliance with Atlantis. And when we get to that holiday issue where Superman and Aquaman are talking about this, Aquaman's like, he's the only world leader who has offered public support for Atlantis. Like, he wins Aquaman over.
Another thing that doesn't parallel our current situation.
No. Do you think we'll make it 2 hours through this before I do my Trump impression? I feel like sooner or later it's going to come up, but we'll see.
Oh, that'd be good.
I am sick though. I'm under the weather. I don't know. It won't sound right. Anyway.
But I love Aquaman. He's great. Those Atlanteans.
But then you were mentioning this before. So Lex is rescued and all of that. And he's given his press conference or maybe he's getting into his limo at that point. And that's when Jenny Hubbard.
Oh my gosh.
From the John Byrne Superman run shows up and shoots him.
Yes. That's like early John Byrne too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so for those that don't know, do you want me to do this? Or you want to?
Yeah, no, you do it.
So like, basically that's a long callback for people to, I don't think there's even a footnote in the editor. They didn't say anything in this issue. So long story short, Luthor used to get bored and he would go out and play mind games with basically regular people, as he would call it. So he played a mind game with Jenny Hubbard, who was a waitress at this diner in the early John Byrne era, and walked in and made $1 million offer. Basically said, like, if let's get married, we'll be married for 1 month. I'll pay you $1 million. Let's
get married. And what a nice way of putting it, Bernie.
What a nice one. He did. That's what he says. That's what he does. And then she's so like torn and flabbergasted, and she's like she walks back away from him at the counter. And then she basically finally comes to terms saying, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. And while she was thinking, he purposely gets in the car and drives away. And she never sees him again. But it was such a callback. And I was so surprised that they even did that. And she's the one who tries to kill him and shoot him.
Now, this garners a lot of sympathy for Lex, and he surges in the polls.
Yes. But
later, this is the issue of Superman, and we're actually going to talk about this more in a couple of weeks, the one that sets up the Return to Krypton storyline. But there are a couple of pages where Lex introduces his cabinet, and Lois is at that press conference, and her question pertains to Jenny Hubbard. Why has no one been allowed to speak to her?
Yeah.
So there, we did get a little bit of follow-up later, but the reason I bring that up is at the end of this issue where he's shot, he's in the hospital room and he's like, it's almost as if I planned it this way. I mean, do you think he actually did plan it, or it was just something that worked to his benefit and he was pleased? Or do you think they actually found her? I mean, what do you think?
I can't believe he would have planned that like that. That would be, I mean, maybe. But I mean, to me, it always seems like he's had this way of spinning terrible things into gold and just make it work for his own purposes. So I hope that's not a thing. I hope he didn't actually plan that.
Yeah. I mean, I
wouldn't put it past him, but
yes, that's the thing. I wouldn't put it. I mean, it's interesting that to my knowledge, we're never explicitly told whether or not he was behind it.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked. Like you said, I wouldn't put it past him if he did. I guess my reading of it, because also I don't know that he would put himself in that much danger, unless it turned out it wasn't really a real bullet or something like that.
Right.
I feel like it's more that it really, like, he spun the Atlantis situation to his advantage, and then this fell into his lap. And I feel he's just like, wow, like, this is great. I guess that's kind of where I land.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's more believable that she's working and has seen all this footage of him becoming like the leader, and she just can't deal with it anymore. She's like, I remember what you did to me and who you are, and she just wants to end him. But I can see that more.
So that's October 2000, and then we're going to jump to election night and those stories in November. But there's not much of an opportunity here for us to really talk about the Adventures of Superman title. And I know you didn't read those issues. I didn't ask you to. So let me just real quick, for anyone who's really been following along, you're like, what's going on in these books? So we're at the point in time now where J.M. DeMatteis is writing Adventures of Superman.
Right.
And the long and short of it, these were far from my favorite issues, I'm sorry to say. But the long and short of it is that Satanas wants the soul of the city. Oh. And he rounds up characters with dual personalities or personas. So Kitty Faulkner, aka Rampage, Rose and Thorn, Carrie, that young boy who lives in Lois and Clark's building who can manifest that leather-clad adversary.
Yeah.
And then he also has a physically rejuvenated, more leaner Oswald Loomis, prankster, as kind of his jester. And it's kind of like the dual nature of those personas. There's some kind of energy tied to that, and he wants to use them to capture the soul of the city. And anyway, Rampage and Rose and Thorn refuse, and they actually align themselves with Superman in subsequent issues. And it gets to the point where Superman sacrifices his own soul to Satanas in exchange for the city, saving the city. Oh. But with Superman gone, his physical form, and now I'm jumping ahead. These are like a few issues. I'm kind of consolidating here. But there's one issue where his soul is in hell, but his physical form is still on Earth, and he's unshaven, and he essentially, it's very much like the bad Superman from Superman 3. Oh, right. Yeah. And he's engaging in a little, public defacing of property and things like that. And without Superman, kind of the whole soul of the city has suffered, and people are at each other's throats and whatnot. And then Lois uses the Kryptonian meditation technique that Clark had been teaching her, and she's able to save his soul. And they even as I'm saying this, it's like,
yeah, you're listening to what you're saying right now. It sounds ridiculous.
Anyway, that's what was going on. So Lois is able to get to Clark, and they're able to rescue Carrie from hell and bring him back. Oh, okay. And this kind of puts the kibosh on Satanas and his plan to take over the city. And weirdly, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, because J.M. DeMatteis, by the end of the storyline, he's only plotting it. And Joe Casey, the new writer of Adventures of Superman, who would stay on the book for a while, is scripting it. And then the final issue in that storyline, DeMatteis isn't even involved at all. It's just, clearly it was paying off what he had set up, but he's not even credited on the issue. So I don't really know. But that's what was going on over in the pages of Adventure Comics, or Adventures of Superman. I guess more interestingly for us, especially those who followed the books for so long, Ron Troop and Lucy Lane finally get married and have their baby.
Oh,
who they
okay.
named Sam after General Sam Lane. So
Oh, okay. Now, was Adventures typically, remind me? I feel like Adventures was the book that dealt with the more supernatural and fantasy approach kind of stuff. And then Man of Steel was a little more like sci-fi
yeah,
tech kind of
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, Adventures dealing with supernatural was really just that short period of time when DeMatteis was writing the book. We
God,
talked
they
about
loved.
how initially it was supposed to be the Man on the Street book, but they never really,
No.
I think, figured that out. And then we had the supernatural angle. And then Joe Casey comes on, and then the book is
Yeah.
stable for quite a while.
Yeah.
But
Okay, cool.
anyway, man, that's what was going on there. But all right, we're now...
Except for that one issue that we can talk about, that we talked about a little bit too, right? That one you had me read, the 591, is when...
Oh yeah, that's under Joe Casey's run, yeah, which we'll get to for sure.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. But in any event, so now it's November 2000, it's election night, and we start off with Superman 164 by Loeb, and the art duties are split. We have McGuinness drawing the Bizarro portions and Carlo Barberi drawing the election-related pieces of this. So I don't know, what stood out to you about this one?
Well, no, that one I don't think I got to read.
Oh, is that not? I thought that was the one that was collected in full, where Bizarro #1 from the Emperor Joker world. He shows up, he grabs Jimmy Olsen because he thinks he's Gravedigger Lad.
Sorry. I scrolled past it because the first thing I wrote was effing Bizarro.
Well, so funny enough, so that's one of those issues that in the newer trade they only include the election related pages. They excise all the Bizarro stuff, which maybe you would have preferred.
Oh my God! I literally write effing Bizarro. And I wrote the biggest out loud damn it I said in reading this assignment.
Aw. I've come around. When you hear the Emperor Joker episode, but I kind of came around on this version of Bizarro and the Bizarro speak and all of that. But we can tread lightly there because that's not really the main reason why we read it, right? It was for the election piece.
The election, right. There was okay, my questions about this were who is this Supergirl? And she's kissing on Jimmy, and what secret does Jimmy now know? That's what I was trying to figure out. And again, I think it's because I'm missing stuff from the trade that I didn't get to read.
No, that's more. Those more reference other things that were going on. So the secret is that Superman had confided in Jimmy that he's married.
Oh, okay.
After the business with Jimmy photographing Superman with the wedding band. And then the JLA spun this whole cover story that they're communicators, but then Superman went to Jim. He's like, no, I am actually married. I wanted you to know.
Oh, gotcha. And I haven't reread all of that section. So that's why that threw me off when I was reading it. Sorry.
And then the Supergirl side of it, this ties into the Peter David series that was going on at the time. So at this point, and I've not done my full read of this, so I might be a little shaky.
I read
on the
details.
First
few years ago. Yeah.
But essentially, Supergirl had become this Earthborn angel. And then I think around issue 50 of the series, I want to say the angel part was sort of severed and it was just Linda Danvers and she was slightly depowered and she shifted her costume. And that's the version of the character that we're dealing with here.
Oh, got it. Okay. Thank you. I was trying to figure out, because again, I figured it was there's stuff going on around this era that I just didn't reread. I'm not aware of. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. But anyway, so Bizarro grabs Jimmy and all of that. I guess important setup for stories to come down the line, especially as we barrel towards our Worlds at War. Bizarro's out in space and Ignition, one of the holdovers or carryovers from the Emperor Joker story, comes and takes him. And he'll ultimately end up in Pokolistan being experimented upon by the Russian General Zod. It's a whole thing, but you feel for Bizarro #1 in terms of where he ends up, but that's set up here.
Okay.
But relevant to our President Luthor discussion here, you have Batman showing up to talk to Lois and Clark. And we get this. This is an important bit of business that, to my knowledge, was not said anywhere else, that the B13 virus erased all records of Lex, everything. So there's no old dirt to use. And he says to them, he's like, do you have anything on him that we can use? And do you remember Superman's response here? Because this really stood out to me.
No, I don't.
It's something to the effect of what are we supposed to dig up something on him so he can't run? It's like, yes. Yes.
Yes, actually, that's exactly what we need to do. But again, a perfect example of nobody knows. Nobody knows that Lex is this guy. And now there's not even a record. And is, again, for when you're talking about conspiracy, is that Lex has this connection to all the B13 stuff. You can't tell me that wasn't planned. I'm
Right.
going to use
Oh,
some
yeah.
of this, just erase it all. Like that's classic Lex, but nobody else is going to know.
Yeah. And I mean, Batman, when you get to the end of No Man's Land, the way Lex was ultimately able to spin it, and I think the way that the people of Gotham and the rest of the country see it, is that he came in and he was instrumental in the rebuilding and reunification of Gotham City. But really, he was forging titles to all of these properties. It was a massive land grab that Batman was able to stop on New Year's Eve. Lex was real busy on New Year's Eve that year, because that was okay. Well, we won't pull at that thread too hard.
No.
But that scene here that we're talking about, Superman says, dig into people's personal background so they can't run for political office. And Batman says, we're talking about Luthor. And Superman says, yes. And that's why you have to put some faith in the American people to do the right thing. And with that, Superman sealed his own fate.
Yes, he did. Yep.
And then Batman leaves, right? And that's it. I mean, it's one of those things where like, what?
But he comes back. He doesn't give up, because even after Superman has said that, he then comes after Lex.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, we could stay on the Batman thread here.
Yeah,
because the Batman in this is fantastic. Where
it was so great.
On election night, this is one of the stories this is in the Lex 2000.
Yeah, it's
one.
one of the best
wait,
lines.
or is that in the Secret Files? Help me out here. I mean, not that it really matters.
I think it's in the Secret Files, but it is one of the best lines in the whole run, in my opinion.
Go for it.
When basically Batman comes down to it and says, you can be president or you can keep the kryptonite, but it can't be both.
Yeah, but Lex backs him down. I mean, like, that's the
thing. I know, and that's what pissed me off even more, because it's like, after that, Lex threatens goes, you know what? When I'll be president, the first thing I could do is use all of the resources under my control to find out exactly where you are, who you love, it wouldn't be very long. I mean, it wouldn't take me very long to use everything in the presidential power to find out more about you, Batman.
Yeah.
And that shuts him down.
And that's basically, it's been a while since I looked at that Cadmus arc from the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, but because Amanda Waller knows that Bruce is Batman. Yeah. And it's that same idea that if, you were to use all of these resources at your disposal, you could find out who he is. You can make his life very difficult. So he's able to back him down on election night. And then jumping once again to that Christmas issue that we love so much, where throughout the issue, Superman is visiting with each of the members of the Justice League. And with Batman, he gives Batman a magnifying glass from Lois. And Batman thanks Lois. And then there's a few panels of silence. And then Batman says, when the time is right, we'll take Luthor down, which is just like, I love it. It's like, no, this guy's not letting this go.
You know it's coming. You know it's coming. It takes a little while, but it happens.
Yeah, it's great. And we'll have more to say about when we talk about that two-parter when they get the ring back. But I just love under Loeb's pen in particular that we see in these issues, and then of course as we'll see in Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, which I know I quote this moment so many times, but in Public Enemies when Superman's grabbed Lex. And Lex is essentially saying, like, do it, right? Do it, and you'll be done after this.
I dare you. Yeah.
I dare you. And Batman says, he's like, there are ways we can make it look like an accident.
It's like, what the hell?
I love that. And it's funny because I did go back. Clearly it's on the mind. I was flipping through those issues because in my head I was like, I wonder if that was just a bluff to Lex. But no, there's narration from Bruce in that moment in Public Enemies where he says, it wasn't that long ago I was in a similar situation with the Joker and Jim Gordon talked me down. I am no Jim Gordon. So it's like he's not trying to talk to him.
Sometimes I start to wonder, like, is Gotham in New Jersey? Like, the way Batman talks.
It's amazing. But yeah, so that election night issue, there's that bit with Batman, Superman, and Lois.
Yeah.
Then later there's a moment of Superman in the monitor womb of the watchtower as all of the returns are coming in. And he says, like, madness. Like, he can't believe that Lex is doing as well as he is. And Martian Manhunter's like, well, maybe Lex really has everyone's best interest at heart. And they let out a big laugh. I guess this is as good a place as any to kind of hit on this a little bit more specifically, which is like, it's crazy. There's not even really any discussion of Superman intervening at any point, really. And then it's after the fact where he articulates more specifically, like, I didn't think he would actually win.
Well, And I keep going back to the whole idea of you can't say you stand for truth and justice if you're going to intervene in basically what America is founded on. Like what you say you believe, it's your adopted home. Like if he intervened, it would go against everything he's ever stood for. And he knows that. And he's almost handcuffed by his morals.
Well,
and I think it's frustrating for us, but I think it's true.
Well, but this is an interesting question then, because I guess where I would push back on that, like when you say, or when we say intervene, like what do you have in mind by intervene? Because I'm not advocating for, and I definitely wouldn't expect to see the character like forcefully, I don't know, show up at the voting booth, or even after Lex has been, is sworn in as president, forcibly like remove him from the Oval Office. But in terms of speaking out, I guess that's more where I get more frustrated with the character, because it's like he doesn't even speak up. It just in a public forum.
Let me ask you this though. Think about it this way as a reporter. Like how Perry talks so much about, and it's like they have to have proof. They can't just spout their own opinions. See, the problem is, like Superman and Batman are talking about, they have nothing. They have no legs to stand on. They've all experienced all these things with Luthor, and they know it. Like they can line it all up and say, "But he did this. But he did this. But don't forget he did this." But there's no proof, and it's all been wiped out. And he can't, as a reporter, put anything in the Daily Planet without having a source, without having substantial proof. So what's he going to do? He even said, like, we can't just make something up or dig something. Like, he can't. There's nothing to do. So I think our frustration with it seeming like he's not intervening is, what can he actually do?
Well. So first of all, as far as the digging something up, I never took it to mean like fabricate something. But I think they were just trying to find.
They can't find anything.
They know he's done bad things, so it's a matter of trying to find evidence, which I don't.
Right.
I think morally they would have been perfectly justified to do. But but in any event, I guess what I mean is him going on a talk show and saying, "I've known Lex Luthor for a long time. He's not qualified to be president. Trust me, I'm Superman." Now that's a pretty explicit instance of that, but he could have.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I just think even a statement like that would be irresponsible, though, too, because that's a matter of opinion. That would be just. I mean, yeah, I guess you're saying you just kind of wish you would have slandered Lex more. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I mean, I get your point that, like, yes, he doesn't have hard evidence that he can point to, but he can talk about experiences that he's had, or even if it just is in the realm of opinion, right? Not lying about him, but saying, like, I don't think he's fit to be president. I mean, I guess, and this is why I love this, and it's interesting to talk about, because I guess where I feel the frustration on that front is where we started with this, where, they're putting a lot on the American people, I feel like in an unfair way, because the people don't know, right? Like the story would have played differently and would have tracked more closely with what we live through in real life, right? If the people of the DC universe had a very clear vision of who Lex is and what he's done, and they chose to ignore it. And maybe Superman figured, well, I don't need to say it. They've seen him say and do all of these things. They'll make the right choice. That would have been a little different. I guess my frustration is like, why would you expect a different outcome from these people when they don't know what you know?
Yes.
And I get from it, like, he just doesn't think this is a possibility, but it's, I guess my point, I don't mean to belabor it, but it's like, why do you not think it's a possibility?
Well, and I guess I got really thrown thinking about this too, where if you look at the DC universe proper, Lex being president is the first real time that we even have any of the superheroes talk about or interact with the White House. Like, we never, that's purposeful, because like Superman, comics are forever. Like, if we have him talking to President Obama, that dates the book. If we have him talking to President Clinton, that dates the book. Like, we need it to be more of an immortal approach where we don't really know what year it is, except for Y2K. But that kind of mentality, I think, I can't really think of a time where they've had many instances where he's talking to the president.
Yeah. Well, and in these stories in particular, they don't ever explicitly name Bush or Gore. There are allusions to them.
Yes,
it's clear that those are the other ones who are running, but they never name them. But I guess thinking of a real world example, well, the equivalent to Superman, of course, I go to The Rock, but it's like in the 2020 election, right? Dwayne Johnson, he was a big deal about the fact that he endorsed Biden and Harris and did I don't know, an Instagram live or something with them, right?
Yeah, okay.
And it wasn't about slandering anybody. It was just about
supporting them.
And so I guess my point is Superman could have done something along those lines. Now, all that to say, I get why on the one hand, I get why they did it because then it lends to that frustration that he feels after. I guess my counterpoint to that is his frustration would have been even greater if he made an appeal to the people and they ignored him. So I think that still could have had a similar type of effect. But all to say, as I was skimming through Public Enemies again, there is this moment where Superman and Lex are fighting. This is when Lex is in the green battle suit and all that. And via Superman's narration, he says, "The world will never know how much I struggled with whether or not to interfere." And he says, "Should I have gone on television and told people not to vote for Lex?" But he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he says, to your point, that would have been interfering with this process that I respect. And he says, the people need to make their own choice, even if it's the wrong one. Lex Luthor should never have been president. So I guess from his perspective, he would have been interfering with the process, even if it had been something like going on TV and endorsing someone else or expressing his opinion.
Well, that tracks with democracy through the ages, and even what we're dealing with currently. There are a number of people who have come out and said, "I thought I was making the right choice. I thought for this reason and this reason, this is why I made this choice." And then they're getting proven wrong on some things, and they're coming out saying, "This is not how I thought it was going to go. But I chose to trust the process, and I made a choice based on what I thought." But so I mean, I get why you're frustrated, but I understand it too.
It's a fun frustration though. It's now the Aquaman thing that really that's something else. But this is a fun frustration, and I think it lends to an interesting conversation.
Anthony is not going to eat tuna fish for the next year. He's going to boycott.
This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. We all love the big budget superhero films, but the world of independent cinema remains a place of unbridled creative freedom and entrepreneurial spirit. Whether you're an independent filmmaker yourself or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news about events, discounts, tickets, and much more. If Lex had lost, do you think he would have accepted the result?
Oh, Jesus. There would have been an insurrection on Atlantis.
Yeah, but so as we kind of continue here on election night, what's interesting, I talked about how the way this is collected and just the way this plays out generally, it is really kind of these moments, and even more so because in Lex 2000 and in Secret Files, they are just a collection of short stories themselves, and so we have this triumph over tragedy story, the lead story, and these are all by Jeph Loeb in the Lex 2000 one shot, where Lex is actually officially elected president, and it's this biography that GBS has put together, and it really, runs through his story. And then he has his notes. There are certain things like the business with the clone that he wants taken out. Yes. He doesn't like that it omits his role in Final Night in saving the universe.
Yes.
So that felt all in keeping with his character.
Well, and with his character too, I remember how he tells Kat, she goes, "Sir, we air in 3 hours," or something ridiculous. And he goes, "Yes, you'll get it done."
Yeah.
He's like, "Whoa, okay."
I know.
That's the kind of president he's going to be, and that's his press secretary.
And that's going to be the Yeah, I know. Oh, it's amazing. And then there's another short story, Where Were You?, where Jimmy's going around asking people about their, where were they when they found out that Lex was run and all of that. I think I don't know, the Lana story is really interesting, but maybe the highlight of this is the he's heard the news vignette where Superman has gotten the results and he's out in space and he's punching asteroids and moons and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. He's busy.
Yeah.
He's it's the equivalent of him going to the gym and hitting a punching bag kind of deal.
That was a feeling that I understood, and I understood it even
I'd
more
agree.
so
Yes.
this time around. So,
Yes.
and this Lana's story, this two-parter, which is so, and Todd Knock did the art, and the colors are really striking, and it's just 2 pages.
Yeah.
But it's Clark visiting her in Smallville, and he goes to the nursery of baby Clark Ross. By the way, when I had Paul Kaminsky on recently, and he said there was someone related to Lana that they're trying to figure out the continuity of, and I went right to my Justice for Pete Ross and all that. But then as I was listening back to the episode, I was like, oh, I bet he was talking about Clark Ross. I don't have any, he didn't tip me off to anything I don't know, but I feel like that might, because I feel like the baby's status and continuity is like, who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah, who knows?
So that maybe needs to be sorted out. But what did you think about this back and forth between Clark and Lana?
Oh, well, it's also sad too, because I think, because it harkens back. I had to look it up because he brings up how she was tortured by Luthor. And he's like, don't you remember like what he did to you? Like, how can you be okay with all of this? Like, that was again another early callback that it was also the introduction of the Kryptonite ring. Like, it's that same issue where we actually find Luthor makes a Kryptonite ring, but it's such an early callback saying, how can you forget what he did to you? And how can you be okay with basically Pete bringing him into your, I guess, family, so to speak? It's scary. I mean, and again, I was one of the moments I put parallel to current events. I can't imagine in all politics lately, what would happen if you were married to somebody who you really care for, and they're like, well, I'm going to align myself with this camp, and it could be really good for my career. And you're like, this is a bad idea. Look at what they've done. Yeah, it was kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great to see the conversation between Pete and Lana when they were deciding to do this or not. So obviously we don't get to see that, but it was a relief to know that Pete didn't know about what had happened to Lana, that she had been captured and tortured. Because if he had been able to look past that, I mean, we would have had to abandon our Justice for Pete Ross.
And I think he says that. I was why haven't you told Pete?
Yeah, and she says basically she couldn't without giving up Clark's secret.
Well, and that's the thing, right?
And she says it's like, how many years ago was it? And we have no proof. And how many times have you tried to bring him in and you haven't been able to?
Right.
And essentially what she conveys to Clark is that Lex is a bad man, but Pete's a good man, and maybe having Pete around will be a positive force. But then after Superman flies away, she's talking to the baby, and she says maybe something bad will happen to Lex, and then Daddy will be president. It's one of those things that I remember at the time being like,
That's
whoa.
dark.
That's dark. Is she going to do something? Is she planning? Nope. But it's never, that was it.
Yeah.
So it was an intriguing idea.
So now looking ahead, and I haven't read Public Enemies in a little while, but when all that goes down, and so who becomes president after Lex?
Yeah. Pete does have a short stint as president.
Okay. I'm trying to think. So that was that same time frame?
Yeah. And then, do you remember the Ruin storyline? I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why we have to continue fighting for Pete. But yeah, he's elected. And then the following week is Adventures 586. We mentioned that opening sequence, a silent or large, well, not totally, but largely silent sequence of Superman begrudgingly going to, I guess, campaign headquarters to congratulate Lex. Well, actually, that's a question that I have for you. Ultimately, he says, congratulations, President Luthor. But what do you think Superman's intent is as he's walking in? Because there's a moment where he stops himself and he clearly clocks all the people cheering for Lex. So it's like, what was he going to do? Because I feel like he changes his mind.
Well, I mean, it's almost like he stops and reads the room and sees what's going on. I could have seen him. I could imagine he had a plan to say to Lex, you fooled everybody, but you haven't fooled me. But he can't even do that because he's surrounded by all these supporters, and he has to almost, which is probably, again, why he's so upset, he has to kind of fall into line. Because if he didn't, he would look like the bad guy, not Lex.
Yeah.
But that's what I can imagine him saying is like, I'm coming for you. Like, I know who you are.
But that cover of them shaking hands and that interior page of him I mean, those are striking, iconic images. I feel like if you search President Lex, that'll come up. It's really striking imagery. The following week is Man of Steel 108, and that's one of the ones that is collected in that trade paperback. And in full, I believe, in that original trade. I think the more recent one only includes a few pages, but Lex's victory parade is interrupted by protesters from Suicide Slum. It's like the Citizens Army for the Economic Liberation of Suicide Slum.
Yes.
And once again, he doesn't command his underlings to get rid of these people. He stops so that he can hear them out. And he tells them that this sounds like this is a matter for LexCorp. And this is his opportunity to introduce that he has divested himself of his business holdings. And he's brought in Talia, spelled head, but pronounced heed.
Correct.
Right. To run things. And here's what's so funny. I don't know how funny. To me, it's interesting. I don't know how funny it is. When you read the trade, I think it's like the second story in there that shows you him approaching Talia to take over the company.
Yes, it is.
But that story doesn't come until the Secret Files issue way later. So this issue of Man of Steel is the first instance of, Talia's going to run his company,
right.
Yeah. But further commingling of the Superman and Batman worlds, which I like. I mean, I enjoyed her in that position.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think so right after this.
Well, this is the one where there's the character Luna. She was the leader of the Cyber Moth. She had been trapped in the Phantom Zone. There's an issue of Man of Steel where Superman rescues her. And then in Man of Steel 108, the creature that she had brought back from the Phantom Zone attacks Metropolis. And the day is saved by a returning Emil Hamilton, who's back with his upgraded cybernetic arm because he'd been gone for a while and now he's back. And Steel offers him a place at Steelworks.
So I have a little section at the end of my notes. It says good quotes from this arc. I don't know why they would put this in here, and it's about Hamilton's arm. I don't know why John Henry has to say it this way, but says you have one amazing appendage.
That registered with me as well,
bro. Like you don't got to do it that way. You don't got to do him dirty using that phrase.
I agree with that.
I'm like, that's going to go in that section of my notes.
Yeah.
There's a number of things, and I'm trying. I have my notes in order of the trade because right after this, I have the end of the Contessa. I don't know when you want to talk about that.
Sure. That's one of those stories from the Secret Files issue, but we could talk about it here. It's called Rocket's Red Glare.
Man. Like he offs her. And I forgot that. Like I just thought she kind of disappeared. But no, she legitimately disappeared. He disappeared her.
Well, you know what's funny? This came up so recently. I had totally forgotten that she was running the agenda.
Yes.
Over in Superboy and Sins of Youth and all of that. I was like, oh, okay. So she had this last hurrah. And then, in this 3-page story in a Secret Files, Lex has her killed. There's this military strike and they take her out while he's having this conversation with the senator who clearly has some interest in him and is asking about his wife because she's been missing and it's kind of nebulous. And
I think I'll be divorced soon.
Yeah.
Whoa. But he also doesn't want any he doesn't want any kind of loose ends out there that could possibly, because again, he can erase data and B13 can erase records. But now he has to erase people because she has a lot of dirt on him.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. It's like, damn, he just missiles and offed her.
I know. It's a pretty, I don't know, kind of perfunctory end for a character who had a sizable role for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also immortal, but she's not invulnerable. So because she was drugged and held captive for months after she gave birth to Lena. So presumably she could be taken out. And I think it held. I guess a related Secret Files short story, if we're talking about this kind of area for Lex, Cersei offers herself to Lex.
Oh.
It's one of those.
I don't have that.
Oh, do they not include that? In that in that older trade, maybe they didn't. Phil Jimenez wrote it. I think Yannick Paquette drew it.
That's cool.
But essentially Cersei shows up and offers herself in every possible way to Lex and kicks her to the curb. So,
bro, Lex, that's a bad call.
So now it's holiday time. It's December in the DC universe, and we have this issue of Superman 165 that we've already hit on a lot of the salient points already, but this is the holiday issue. It's drawn by a host of different artists like Joe Madureira and Ian Churchill, Mike Wieringo, McGuinness.
It's one of my favorite things that I read of this. It's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love how it goes through basically the entire Justice League and like it was in some cases a page or two really for each character. And I just kind of like each moment they had, especially the Wonder Woman one too, like her warning to him saying like, you cannot let this obsession with Lex get out of hand. And again, the art, like who drew that? I got to look who drew the Wonder Woman. Cause like
that was Ian Churchill did that one. Art Adams did the Flash one, where Ringo did the Green Lantern one. I think Humberto Ramos did Martian Manhunter.
Ian was on the books for Wonder Woman, I think, like the actual Wonder Woman title at that time. And man, he drew her. It's stunning. Like it's very attractive writing. And it's a little like, okay, it's a little bit much, but it was pretty incredible how the two of them looked together too. It was really well done.
It was, yeah. What stood out to me about that little vignette was because they're sparring and then she's like full on straddling him. And it's very sexual.
It's very sexual. Yeah.
While the spirit of what they're talking about is like, as your best friend who's a woman, you need to take Lois away and spend some time with her. So I don't know. I don't know how well it really synced up, but that's okay. It was well, striking.
And even I had to look at the last panel a few times because it really looks like I couldn't tell whether they're embracing or kissing. If you look at it, I was like, "Whoa!" And I'm like, I think they're just embracing. I think they're just hugging each other.
Yeah. But that was a nice one because it's like all the other discussions were about Lex, and to your point, this is like, hey, what about you and your relationship? So I like that.
How are you dealing with this? Yeah, it's going to affect everything. Like he's going to be obsessed with it.
I mean, the Martian Manhunter one was nice. I mean, that might be the earliest instance of Clark explicitly articulating, like, I can't believe they elected him. And Manhunter says, the first time he breaks the law, I'll be right there with you to drag him out of office.
Right.
And I like John's perspective.
Flash.
Yeah.
Flash even says, like, you got to believe in the American system. And I was like, oh, Flash.
Well, but then what's the next thing that the Flash says? I mean, this might be my favorite part, other than the Batman thing, of when the time is right, we'll take him down. Because while he says, it's like, I believe in the American process.
I didn't write that in the next
He goes, but if you want to grab Lex, I'm right there with you.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, I didn't write that down.
Yeah, Wally's ride or die. He's like, we have to respect the system, but also like, I'm game. Let's go get him.
Huckleberry. Yeah.
It was great. But with John, I like because he talks about how he's often envious of Superman, of how well he's assimilated. Right. Yeah. But this is an instance where he's actually kind of grateful, I think, to have a little bit more distance because this is such an illogical outcome that he really can't reconcile. So I like that. The Kyle bit we hit on before was interesting because he says they're all criminals, but he's still, or they all could be, but he still votes. He still has some hope in the system, which was nice. And we mentioned Diana, we mentioned Bruce, we mentioned Flash. Oh, and Aquaman we talked about too. Yeah.
Your favorite Aquaman.
Yeah, that guy.
And again, Plastic Man, it's funny because he's just like, classically, he's just trying to make Superman smile. Like he's just trying to, it's like, hey, lighten up, buddy. And he's just trying to be goofy for him because it's not, he can tell this is not an easy time to be dealing with this.
And he makes Superman grin. He says, what's worse than one Lex Luthor being president of the United States? Two Lex Luthors. Two Lex Luthors. And at the end, Superman takes
Lois there it is.
on a vacation to the bottle city of Kandor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. That one is, and it's such a great cover of Lois and Clark with the ornaments and all the Justice Leaguers on them. Yeah. It's a good one.
I've pulled before I sold a good amount of my collection. But I've kept all the holiday oriented issues. So then when as the holidays in our house change, I put up those covers like on frames and that kind of stuff too. So it's fun to look at. I love that cover so much.
Right on. Yeah, that was definitely a standout. It's because I think it works as a really effective follow-up to the election.
Yeah.
I think, you get some good perspective into where each of the members of the Justice League, where they fall. And it's also just a great holiday issue because he's bestowing gifts to each of them as they go, like ring polish for Green Lantern and what does he give Flash? Tube socks, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny thinking about Flash wearing big old white tube socks.
Yeah. The next week in Adventures 587, this was another couple of pages that I think could have been included in the trade, where Lex bids Metropolis farewell before going to DC, and he stops at his parents' graves and essentially says, like, "You never believed in me." But he also hit on this idea of, like, this is the first time since the formation of Metropolis where there won't be a Luthor watching over it. And I just thought it was an interesting idea, and it was,
interesting.
Kind of cool to just have that little moment and that little bit of reflection before he leaves for this next stage. And then the week after that is Man of Steel 109. That's the one that I think the cover says It Was a Wonderful Life. And that's the one where Leary Lee from the Linear Man shows up and shows Clark a vision of the future. What would happen if he gives in to hopelessness and gives up?
Yeah. Don't give up.
Yeah. Right. Well, I don't know what resonated with you about this vision of the future.
Well, and I enjoyed that one because, again, like you said, it felt like A Wonderful Life. Where is it? I got to look it up in the trade really fast. I didn't write as many notes down about it, but I just really enjoyed the tone of it. That's what.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of bonkers to even consider the notion that Superman would just kind of, abandon his post as a result of all of this. But the gist of it is that.
Oh, the safari and all that was happening. Yeah, there's a lot of this. You're not there to protect them, and your friends have to basically take charge. You've left, so Perry and Jimmy and Lois have to try to take Lex down, and that does not end well.
Yeah, and the gist of it is that he recognizes that economic power is the ultimate control, and that by the time he's out of office, he's accumulated so much power and wealth that essentially he's positioned his company to have its hand in virtually everything, and continues to expand the B-13 technology. And I guess sort of the last frontier of this is making this deal out in the desert with a representative from Pakistan. Now, this country will continue to become really important moving ahead. That's the base of operations for that version of General Zod and all of that. But that's when we get kind of our earliest indication that that place is going to be a player. But that essentially, I guess, once that happens, I don't really know what exactly they were hinting at. I think it might be a B-13 sort of thing, that then there's this network that kind of covers the entire world. I don't know. It's bad is the gist of it.
and they show, and I was very confused too, because they show this hologram of, it looks like a hologram of a woman.
Yeah.
And it's like a conspiracy that escaped even Luthor. But then she doesn't expand on that. Like, because obviously it doesn't go to fruition because Superman kind of snaps out of it and takes her warnings to heart. But I almost wonder if there was something that was going to be coming in our Worlds of War that we didn't like fully see. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I just don't know offhand who that woman was supposed to be, but I'll probably have a better answer as we get into our Worlds of War. I haven't mentioned much about Action Comics specifically during this time. This Action and Adventures during this time didn't touch on the President Lex of it all as directly as Superman and Man of Steel did, right? And those were the ones that.
Well, there's nothing. There's only really one little blurb in it from my trade.
Yeah, essentially, in Action there was a two-parter before the election called Kith and Kin, and this is where you have, real quick, you just have Lois trying to pin down who was responsible for the kryptonite poisoning of Superman. And that leads her to Africa and the League of Shadows. And really at the same time, Superman links up with Talia and they go head to head against Ra's al Ghul, who is forcing Encantadora to use her magic to help him. And essentially Ra's wants to replace his heart with the heart of Mother Earth. But then Mother Earth chooses Superman instead. But Superman is able to destroy the device and everything's okay in the end. So that's kind of what's going on, is really this running thread of trying to figure out who tried to kill Superman. And now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in Action Comics while we're here, but there's a story coming up where we meet the monstrous character called Cancer with a K.
Right.
And it's a monster,
I remember that.
A monster grown from the poisonous mass that was removed from Superman's body. And that will ultimately lead them to Pakistan and the reveal that General Zod, who's not named until our Worlds at War, he's just kind of this mysterious masked figure, was the one responsible for trying to kill Superman. And
that I remember.
Yeah. And the first time they meet, he breaks Superman's jaw. He punches him so hard, he breaks Superman's jaw. So it's a very intimidating figure.
To be,
Yeah. So just like we laid out the supernatural shenanigans going on in adventures, that's the business that's going on in action. But there's also, on the note of Action Comics, 774 in December, this actually did have a little bit of a tie-in to President Lex. First of all, this had guest art. It was horrendous. I won't even say the name. It was so bad. I not to my taste at all. But this is
that wasn't in my reading though.
No. But this is where Lex repaints the White House with lead paint.
Oh Lord.
To keep Superman from being able to spy. So there's that little tidbit that I wanted to drop in there. And then we move into January. We're winding down here. So in January, we get Superman 166. That's the one we're going to talk about more when we do return to Krypton, but that has the announcement of the cabinet. And yeah, I mean, we mentioned them before. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to say about them, but it's an intriguing lineup, I thought.
No, I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, that tracks. Because then I'm also looking at what's coming, what is coming in Worlds of War. And that makes sense too.
Exactly. I think.
Which I need to, when are you finishing this run?
Of course. Yeah, that'll be our big finish.
Man, because like I would love to. I need to reread that because I remember that was a hard read, like not like hard to read, but like just emotionally hard to read.
Yeah,
I really really like that whole arc.
Our mutual friend Perry is going to be joining me for that. He wants to do all the tie-in. He wants to do all the tie-in issues, and I agree to it. But I might have to renege on that. I don't think I can do them all.
That's a lot. But there's an Our Worlds at War special that has to be read. That's the one that you have to read.
Oh, the World's Finest one, you mean? The last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. No, for sure. But so we get the announcement of the cabinet. And on the secret files note, I think now we've hit on all of the stories that were included in that.
Yeah.
And then Man of Steel 110, that is collected in, I think, both of the trades. That's where this creature called Earthquake attacks Lex during his inauguration. You have John Henry and Natasha, who are down in DC, meeting up with Pat Dugan and Courtney Whitmore, and then
Stars and Stripes.
Yeah, and then so they're old friends, which I like that little bit of business. And then John Henry will invite Pat to come back and be the mechanic at Steelworks. I really like in Man of Steel, like really building that out. I like that.
Well, and I kind of liked how like Nat was not too pleased with Courtney. It was like classic like teenage girl, like you're not as cool as you think you are. I don't need to talk to you. Yep. But then like they're working together, and I love it. It was awesome. It was a really cool issue. Yeah. And another example of like Lex pulling Superman in, saying like, let's connect. Let's have a nice photo op together. And just like, you son of a... Yeah, it's a great issue though. I love Stars and Stripes. I've always loved that pairing. It's really cool. And Stargirl.
Yeah. Yeah. I like those characters. And I like I said, just this period of time with John Henry and Natasha in the books and the Steelworks and bringing Hamilton back. And now these two, I like that. I really liked how they're a good vibe. They're building them out. But, I don't know if there will ever be another instance coming up to mention this. So with Hamilton, I mentioned the cyber moths, and they've come up in other episodes too, but they're these cybernetic or high-tech thieves trying to get their hands on the B-13 technology, and they take their orders from someone called Overmind. So I didn't remember this 100%, but I had to look it up. It's Hamilton who's Overmind, and he blames it on the B-13 tech in his arm that it was influencing him. But I'm saying to myself, you know what? When we first met Hamilton, he was up to no good, right? It was some psychotic episode. Then this, and then all the ruin business still to come. I'm like, you know what? I don't think I like this guy. I feel like I've generally been a defender, but it's like one too many things. One too many times of him being up to no good.
And doesn't he frame Pete?
Well, yeah, that's part of exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
So nuts
Justice
to him.
For Pete Ross.
Justice for Pete Ross. The final issue of January is Action 775, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice in the American Way, which we are doing an entire episode on next week. It's going to be, we're going to do that. We're going to do the animated adaptation, and we're going to do the ending battle follow-up. So lots to say on that.
Nice.
February 2001 is the Return to Krypton 4-parter, also getting its own episode. And then in March 2001, bringing us home here, we have this 2-part crossover between Superman, number 168 by Loeb and McGuinness, and Detective Comics 756 by Greg Rucka. And it was a guest artist, and I don't have his name off the top of my head. It was a Coy Turnbull, I want to say. I don't remember offhand.
Wait, for Superman or Detective?
For Detective.
Detective. I don't want to know his name.
Okay.
The art is terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't the regular artist on Detective, which was a bummer.
Sorry if I'm throwing shade, but the art and the coloring it was hard to read that issue, but I still did it.
But this is when Lois enlists Batman's help to retrieve
Yes.
the Kryptonite ring because they find out at a family dinner, Sam Lane, Secretary of Defense, lets slip that Lex has it. He shows it off to people.
Yeah.
So she enlists Batman's help. They break into the White House, and then Superman shows up, and
He's pissed.
the second part of this is like chasing them through the White House. But it turns out that Superman and Batman have been working together all along, and they get caught, but they present what ultimately, long story short, turns out to be a decoy ring to Lex, and they make off with the real one.
The old switcheroo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's like a, I don't know. Like, it felt like a farce actually reading it after a while.
You know, it's funny. I guess I've always held up this two-parter as maybe being a little bit better. The detective part left me kind of cold because it's mostly just them running through the White House. But the Superman issue was really good. Very, very good.
Yeah, I would agree. And because Sam was not being cool to Clark at all. Like, he was just totally being a jerk. I did kind of like in part 2 where like Superman's super pissed off that Batman and Lois are working together. Like, I think they had it all along, him and Batman working together, but I don't think he ever had Lois as part of that plan.
Yeah. This falls at an interesting time because this is in a post Tower of Babel landscape where there's been this huge fracture within the Justice League, but it's also after I have to double check.
It's after Lois was Parasite, right?
Oh yeah. It's well after that, but it's also after, I believe, the Justice League revealing their identities to each other. Because there's this whole business where Batman assumes Lois knows who he is. And she's like, what makes you think that? And he says, there's no secrets in the Justice League. And she's like, what? Because Clark didn't tell her that he shared his secret identity with the rest of the Justice League.
Yeah.
But I love, narration, different perspectives. That issue of Superman is narrated by Batman. And it's great. Yes. He's spying on Clark while he's at this family dinner with both sets of parents. And they have the new Crypto from the Return to Krypton storyline, and he's destroying the kitchen, and Lois is upset. But Batman starts off, he's like, he has a family now, right? A wife, parents, in-laws. He's like, when I first described him to Dick years ago, I told Dick Superman's like lightning, like thunder. But more and more, I see how human he is, and I can't help but think that that's a liability, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the Superman issue, but that also tracks with me. Like, the writing is going to be, who wrote the detective issue? I forget.
Rucka.
It was Rucka. And I usually like Greg Rucka stuff, but I didn't really enjoy that issue.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a book he wrote.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And then the reason why Batman was there, he wanted to give Clark a heads up that the word was coming out that Bruce Wayne was the one who was helping Perry run the Daily Planet. He didn't want that to be a surprise.
Right.
And then we get this business about Lois enlisting Batman's help. But I like that they pull this off and they get the ring back, because that was a big thing hanging over all of them for a while. I mean, it was...
And now finally it's done.
It was during the Jurgens Friends run on Superman when Lex got a hold of that. And then, like we said, on election night, Batman tried and failed. And so now you get a nice payoff to that.
Yeah.
The last issue we looked at... Oh, no, go ahead.
I was not to say, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I have a few good quotes that I thought really rang true from this.
Yeah, go for it.
From this run. I can't remember which issue it was, because that's the only annoying thing in the trade. It doesn't tell you exactly what issue it's from.
Mm-hmm.
But family has the power to wrestle giants, but also is the pain that leaves us fragile as glass. And kind of, you think about how Batman is talking about Superman, how, again, so strong, but then family can make things really, really hard for you, especially no matter how strong you are. So that really stuck out. And then Perry's quote, just because this country's about to go to hell in a handbasket doesn't mean this newspaper does too.
Yeah.
And that was one of my, that was like classic good Perry White writing. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. And then the last issue we looked at was Adventures 590. So now we're full on into the Joe Casey tenure on the book.
Yeah.
And an interesting story about Lex asking Superman to go to Bialya to recover this journalist who's been captured there. And then it turns out that the journalist is not actually a journalist, but is rather an undercover operative, which Superman clocks immediately after he frees this guy. And then they encounter resistance, and this guy starts killing people, right? He's got these moves. But the conversation between Lex and Superman plays out throughout the issue, right? And the gist of it...
and the margins. I love that.
Me too. I like that. I like that device as well. But yeah, I mean, the kind of the core idea is Superman, he's not going to turn away from someone who needs him. But it's like at the same time, he will not just do the bidding of Lex. So he really tries to draw this line of, I'm going to do this on my own to save a life. I'm not doing your bidding.
But it was the note that I put to, I feel like this issue of all of them is like the real first blatant disrespect of Luthor and total disregard that Luthor holds that office. And like Luthor even digs on him, saying like he basically digs on Superman's loyalty to his country. And I think that just kind of sent Superman off. But that stood out to me as he held his tongue, but then finally he had something to hold over Luthor, saying, "No, I know who you are, and I see what you did, and I'm not okay with it."
Yeah.
It was great. It was a great issue.
No, I love that issue because it's kind of a great crystallization of exactly this conflict and the problem that it creates. It's like if you're summoned by the president, right, and sort of tasked with something, well, it's like, okay, how are you going to respond? And then, again, Superman had his lines that he drew and whatnot, but I'm glad they did this. And this is a strong, like you can read this totally in a vacuum. It's a really, really great one-off.
I agree. Yeah. And that was the last thing I read of the whole arc. I think that was it.
Yeah. Obviously, Lex will continue as president for a few years, real world timeline to come, and we'll have a lot to do in the Our Worlds at War crossover. And then, of course, this will all build. We have a revisitation of Public Enemies coming up because I think that warrants another discussion. But yeah, this is how he became president. I mean, it's really, like we said, not a hard event, not a clearly defined arc or storyline, but a major development. And I think my biggest critique is I wanted more. But overall, I think it was I think they did it in an interesting way. And there were some clever reversals on what you would expect Lex to do on the campaign trail and in office.
I think it was a smart way to not make it an event. I think it was a plot device. And it was a great way to offer a new layer to something we've never seen in the Superman books. But the minute you make it an event or like a story arc, I feel like it feels like it has start and end. But the way they did this is great because, again, a presidency lasts for 4 years. Unless he dies or does something wrong, like he's going to be around for a while. And they did a great job with that. I loved it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. I guess maybe my last question, do you wish that we had gotten any more insight into Lex's actual policies or positions? And is there even a way that they could have done it without making it too political or getting too specific? Because it's like, I don't know that the thrust of it is Tomorrow Party, we're sharing this technology, progress, but it's kind of nebulous as far as like what that would actually look like.
Well, isn't that kind of politics? Like I feel like we hear a lot of those things. We hear a lot of those promises, but you don't always see the reality that comes from them until the next person comes in and says, "Oh, like this person said this and they never did it." I guess I would have liked to see, like, Lex came off very, I'm here for the future and for the people. But we never really saw him doing stuff as much for the people. And I would have liked to see him do more of that to almost rub it in Superman's face a little bit more. I think that would have been that would have put it over the edge. I think that would have helped a lot. We heard a lot, we didn't see a lot.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, this was a lot of, I really enjoyed rereading this, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me. And
oh my gosh,
like I said at the top, I think that comparisons to our current president ultimately do Lex a disservice, because I feel like if Imperiex were real, we'd have a better shot with Lex. And true story. Do you disagree? Does anyone disagree?
No. Yeah, no, I think we did a good job. There are definitely parallels. There are definitely lines in this whole arc talking about, like, we're going to give faith to the American people. I mean, but yeah, we already said our piece. It's good.
Yeah. All right. This was a ton of fun. I thank you so much. Anything coming up at All Yeah Skokie or All Yeah generally that you want to share with folks?
Oh, well, Free Comic Book Day is always great. That's coming up the first weekend in May, and Art Baltasar is going to be there. And what's really cool, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, like, Every free comic book day, there is a featured artist that is like used for the logo that is worldwide for free comic book day. And Art Baltazar, owner of the shop with Mark and Franco, all of his work is now featured. It's on the T-shirt, and there's a ton of merch. So he's all of his characters are representing Free Comic Book Day, which is really, really cool. But yeah, we're excited for May to come, and it's always a great day in the shop and in shops everywhere. So
awesome! Oh, that's great. Yeah. I hope people will check that out at the All Yeah family of stores and local comic shops generally. Always a blast whenever we get to do this. And in fact, you are going to be joining me for a Superman Day bonus episode. So people will hear you again on the show in just a few days. But I thank you.
Baby.
Thank you, audience. As always, make sure you come back for our Superman Day special and also for our continuing coverage of the Loeb Kelly era. Until then, as always, it's about what you do. It's about action. Support the podcast and receive exclusive content, including bonus episodes, by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is home to Digging for Kryptonite and another exciting episode in the adventures of Superman. Please subscribe, rate, and review today, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Links are in the show notes. Thank you all